Now, we in Wisconsin have had we know about the dearth of good journalists. Some of us still get the Wisconsin State Journal on our step in the morning. We know how frustrating it is without journalists who do their job. And so we decided to import a journalist to Wisconsin. And we thought, well, how are we going to do this? What's our standard going to be? And it was very simple. We wanted someone that Katherine Harris, who stole the presidency of the United States, hated. Someone that Katherine Harris referred to as twisted and maniacal. But we also wanted somebody that Noam Chomsky says upsets all the right people. We wanted a reporter for the BBC in Britain and the Guardian newspaper, considered to be one of the best investigative journalists in the world. And we wanted a reporter who had just finished traveling to North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Europe, around the whole world, tracking down the high crimes and misdemeanors of the oil industry to write his new book, Vulture's Picnic. Please welcome the world's greatest investigative reporter, Greg Palast.
All right, you know, yeah. Oh boy, we got some work to do. Let's sit down here. By the way, I traded, this is true. By the way, everything I say is true. But when I was in Austin, I grabbed Hightower's 10-gallon hat and I put it on. And I said, "How do I look, partner?" And he said, "You look like a New Yorker in a 10-gallon hat." Thanks, Jim. And thanks to John Nichols, because when you talk about giants in journalism, I always expect John to be like this high. And let us thank Lily Johnson and Ed Garvey, another giant. Giants, and Bob Fest. And I want to thank the Barrymore Theater. This is just always stunning. Let's give an up here. And let's see, what do I... Oh, don't be upset about this. I don't want anyone crying or screaming or running for the exits, but PBS, the public broadcast system, doesn't always tell you the full truth. You might have to send back that mug. Yeah, I found this out. You confirmed this on April 20th last year, which is April 20th, 2010, Hitler's birthday, my ex-wife's as well, and come on, be fair, be kind. And I was in Vegas working, and with Daniel Becknell, a Cajun lawyer, and he said that he'd just gotten a call. It looked pretty grim. He looked pretty sober for midnight. So he just got a call from the Coast Guard. They wanted his permission to open an emergency capsule that had been found, big capsule found floating in the Gulf of Mexico, that they thought had 10 of his clients in it, oil rig workers from the Deepwater Horizon, and they wanted his permission to open it up because they assumed that they were inside, cooked alive. They weren't, they were vaporized. And I watched the columns rising. And I knew I had to get down there. But there was not to pick up greasy pelicans with that mush-mouth liar Jindal like Anderson Cooper did, but PBS said that it was all about BP's culture. Their management culture was to blame. Culture, like, you know, like they're forgetting to wear gloves at the opera, or using your salad fork for the foie gras. Culture. And I thought, you know, it's not culture, it's fraud. It's crime. Now, I'm a reporter. I don't make guesses, okay? Before I was a reporter, I was a fraud and racketeering investigator, and I knew these guys because I'd done a racketeering investigation. I found out who was responsible for the breakup of the Exxon Valdez. The name on the ship was Exxon, but there's a 4-volume report marked confidential which says that the real culprit in the destruction of Alaska is a company called British Petroleum. Now, I happen to know that because I wrote the report. But before I went off to the Arctic, I had to make a stop because I got this, an email. I'm always holding up documents like another Wisconsin guy like Joe McCarthy. The difference is I actually have the documents. Okay. I certainly can't give you the name here. It says, I'm on a vessel in the Caspian Sea, and I can't communicate. It would not, quote, be wise for me to communicate via the official IT system. Certainly it wouldn't. It was from a vessel floating off the capital of Azerbaijan. Now, if you don't know where Azerbaijan, don't worry. Most Americans don't know the capitals of nations until the 82nd Airborne lands there. You know, Mogadishu, Saigon, Kabul. It's Baku. And that's where the Deepwater Horizon disaster began. How? Well, let me have some water, I'll tell you. Yeah, I couldn't communicate via the system, so we set up a secure way to communicate. BP executives and Chevron executives went before Congress in 2009, said, deep water drilling in the Gulf is not going to be a problem because we've never had a problem. Never had a problem that they mentioned. A few months before that testimony, there was an exact same blowout, exactly from a deep water rig in the Caspian Sea owned by British Petroleum, BP. Except they covered it up. At least that's the information from my floating source who was scared to death. So he wouldn't even agree to go in shadow with his voice changed. But I had to get the information. Now, how do you cover up a major blowout of an oil rig like the Deepwater Horizon? And the answer is you cover it up with cash, lots of money. I figured that there had to be a bribe. So I called a man who would know a lot about that. His name is Jack Greinberg. And I knew he might give me the information on BP. He'd just gotten a check from British Petroleum for $90 million. And I knew he was in a bad mood. Because from my calculation, they cheated him out of about $170 million. So now I had a billionaire oil man with the Jones on for BP. And I said, you want to talk, Jack? Now, Jack's interesting. He knows a few things about how it operates. Because he was also, Jack the Spook, head of the CIA's oil analysis operation out of Helsinki Station for the Soviet Union. So I knew how he knew that it worked. And I said, Jack, did they pay a bribe? And he said, meet me in New York, which is good for our budget. So in literally a safe house, he said, yeah, BP bribed. I said, Jack, come on. How do you know that? And he said, because they sent me the invoice. He's their partner in the Caspian. And they billed him for the bribe. Jack, how do you pay? And it's not a small bribe. You're talking about $105 million. So I said, how do you carry $105 million? And he said, ask the bag man. That was the guy we had to find. I said, where's the bag man? He gave me a name. And I said, where is he? He said, I think he's in London or Baku or New York. We know he's in the Northern Hemisphere. You've never met my chief investigatrix, Bad Penny. She got him, and we flew to London, met him for breakfast at the Oriental Club. No address on the door. Go in, past the stuffed elephants. It's where, you know, if Afghanistan is where empires go to die, the Oriental Club is where the spooks go to, the kind of corpses of empire go to have their last G&Ts before burial. So we had breakfast together. He had 2 fingers of Jameson's ice, which I find ice in the morning is disgusting. Now at the time it was legal to bribe, so I said, how do you pay a bribe? He said, well, he showed me an old brown valise, which was carried. I said, do you think that the chairman of BP or the leaders of BP would know about it? He said, I carried the bag, but then I handed it to Lord Brown, the CEO, who handed it to the president personally. I said, well, what was everyone else doing? He said, well, the bag was brought with another bag on the plane, Margaret Thatcher. But that wasn't enough. He not only arranged for the bribes, it was also well, can I say blowjob here? But you know, by the way, that's just not, don't think, oh yeah, over there in the old Soviet Union, the old Islamic Republic of BP over there, you know, we have the same thing of, you know, sex and cash. BP used that on the Minerals and Mining Service in the U.S. The difference between the ex-Soviet apparatchiks and the U.S. apparatchiks is that the ex-Soviet guys demand a lot more money and much better looking women. I've seen the photos. This is fact. Okay, now. So I had to head off to Baku because I need a witness. I can't just say, okay, there's all this evidence, but I needed someone, a witness, to go on camera somehow. So pretending to do a documentary on the economy of Azerbaijan, which should have been suspect because there is no economy of Azerbaijan. There was a $400 million payment by BP to the president, which just vanished. All I know is that his daughter ordered lunch at a restaurant in London for her 6 friends, and the bill came to £300,000. That's about $500,000 for lunch. Not that I'm saying that there's anything illegitimate there going on. So, 400 million missing. I get there and all the witnesses have suddenly disappeared. Someone must have tipped off someone. I didn't know exactly what was going on. And in fact, I got some footage, but it was pretty much a bust. Literally, I was arrested with my camera crew. And they finally figured out that we were not filming the economy of Azerbaijan. Or we were, the bribes, the pollution. And we were busted, and they, of course, asked for our film, grabbed our cameras, and threw us out of the country. but at least they let me keep my pen. Thank you, Miss Badpenny. Now, yeah, there was a blowout. BP's culture, the white gloves at the opera. But they don't act alone. Besides Grindberg, they have other partners, including Chevron. Now, when PBS ran its program, it said literally, and I quote, that the BP culture is unlike the culture of Chevron and Shell. What they didn't tell you, what they left out of the story, well, let me see if you can guess. I'm going to bet you your Ken Burns CD DVD set, if you can tell me the name of the #1 corporate sponsor of PBS. And since they wouldn't investigate Chevron Corporation, because its culture was different than BP, I decided to investigate myself. So BBC sent me down to the Amazon because Chevron Oil had been accused of dumping oil into the jungle. But of course, I show up to investigate in the rainforest. It's raining. That's why it's called a rainforest, you know? I mean, and there's this like swollen tributary of the Amazon. And I've got my hat on and my raincoat and my cameraman. And they tell me that there's going to be a boat taking me to this Kofan Indian village in the middle of the Amazon. So I'm waiting for like Humphrey Bogart and and the African Queen to come chugging down the river. And then this guy in this Jeep that took us into the jungle, my crazy cameraman Rick and I, and he says, "Subarco, your boat." It was literally a log that had been dug out with this hand-carved paddle, and and I'm looking at this raging river, thinking, white reporter's hat seen floating down towards Brasilia. It was like a bad cartoon. A native came out of the rainforest and took us, thank God. And I met with the chief criollo of the Kofan. And he's telling me that some kids died and, that's the story. That's his story, right? I said, yeah, sure. He said his son, I saw pools then of drinking water, but if you put a stick in it, you pick up globs of crude left over from the Chevron Texaco operation. He said his 2-year-old son went swimming, came up vomiting blood, and died. His older son died of cancer. I took the information to Chevron Texaco lawyers and said, what about this? And they said, did they show you a medical certificate? Are these the only kids to die of cancer? They said they can't prove it's our oil because there's no record or evidence it was our oil. And I said, well, maybe there's no record because of this. And it's from your CEO, Presidente of R.C. Shields. It says, Presidente de la Junta, the junta being Chevron. And it says, the last line, I'll leave it for you, but it said, todos los informes previos, if you don't like my Spanish, by the way, chingate, informes previos, deben ser sacados de las oficinas principales y las del campo y ser destruidos. You don't need to know a lot of Spanish to know that documents should be destroyed, destruidos. They destroyed the evidence. Maybe the petroleum broadcast system didn't know that that was also part of Chevron's culture. And that's the problem. at that blowout that was covered up, which Chevron knew about, and the US State Department knew about. Because Chevron went to the US State Department and complained that BP's well had blown out and they were losing money. And they wanted the US government to speak to the British government about BP, but not say a word to Congress. And see, that's what it's about. The men in the Gulf, if you want the details, yeah, you can read the reports. There was bad cement used, something called quick dry cement. Time is money. It's $500,000 a day to rent a rig, right? So they use quick dry cement. You ever heard the phrase, you know, as interesting as watching cement dry? That's because the stuff is slow. When God does it through evaporation, it takes a long time, and that's expensive. So they use quick dry cement, except the crap doesn't work. It doesn't plug the wells properly, and sometimes they just blow out. But it's not about cement. The same exact thing happened in the Caspian Sea, the same crap cement that they knew didn't work, okay? But people didn't, 11 guys didn't die because of bad cement, they died because of a lie. And yeah, that's why we're here. And that's why we're here. That's why John Nichols here, and Ed Garvey, and Tom Hartman, and Jim Hightower, and most important, thank God you're here. Because you're not going to hear it on the petroleum broadcast system. You're going to hear it here. It's time. In fact, I'm thinking that instead of calling it Bob Fest, we call it the No BS Fest. And I'm thrilled to have returned here. And I will be returning tomorrow because it doesn't stop with oil. Tomorrow I'm going to tell you about the radiation salesmen that have come from Fukushima. And just a little bit of a hint, there's 2 nuclear power stations that the Obama administration has agreed to give $8 billion to. And one is called Nina in Texas, which is operated. They said, don't worry, it's not like the bozos who've run our plants before. We've hired a special operator who knows how to handle a nuclear plant, Tokyo Electric Power.